And then it grew into, well, other talk show hosts have newsletters. Why don't I just make a film? Because the United Nations has been handed regulatory control under UNESCO of many of our national parks and monuments. And they're grabbing land in surrounding areas, and people are saying this isn't real. But I have federal documents. I have a law passed in Kentucky blocking it at Mammoth Cave. I'll get in a car and I'll drive around and show people the UN signs, and I'll show people the UN plaques, and I'll show the law, and then I show up and the park rangers run up and threaten to arrest us, freaking out, telling us the UN's good, and telling us to turn our cameras off. See, we didn't know that would happen. I didn't know back in '96, '97 how bad things were. It was shocking that they always show us who they really are. They always show us the tyranny, and sometimes they show us that they're good people. So we started the Access TV show, and back then there really weren't a lot of ways to break into the media. Now there are even more ways. But the key is that you need to be part of this revolution now, and now is the time to get in on it, and now is the time to take whatever your passion is, whatever your beliefs are, whatever you think is important, and put it into effect. And don't have the goal of being a media hotshot. Don't have the goal of making it big time and being on national television, which does nothing, by the way. Frankly, I'll go on some mom and pop radio station in some middle-sized city, and I'll get a bigger response off a 2-hour interview there than I will get being on Good Morning America or CNN, because the people that really watch that are dead folks. Okay, when you drive down your street at night, say 9 o'clock at night, you see all the windows glowing blue. Those people come home, they sit down, they passively watch the television, they eat their TV dinners, they take their Prozac, they drink their Schlitz malt liquor, they drink their Jack Daniels, and they go in and they go to bed. And they say, hail Bush, hail Clinton, hail Pelosi, and they're all caught in that false left-right paradigm, and they believe in the system, and they're so self-centered that they're going to destroy themselves. Because they're so self-centered, they didn't even see the threat to themselves because they were so lazy. Literally, I've experienced it. The audiences that watch national television, the audiences that are really into it, and I don't mean because you watch it some or passively, or the real TV heads. It's just per capita, they're zombies. They are literal zombies. Some of them are going to wake up from the Matrix, some of them aren't. Now, there are a lot of people who are propagandized listening to mainstream right-wing talk radio, but at least it's a whole different type of medium, and that gets all off into science of which type of the media is most effective to reach people. It's obviously television, because it puts you into a mesmerized state. Your brain waves lower, depending on the individual, but after about 15 minutes on average, into a sleep mode. You were actually hypnotized from the flicker rate of the TV and the light. That's how hypnotists would hypnotize you, with a flashing light or swinging pendulum, or the two in unison. And so, again, people are in a highly suggestible state when they're watching television, versus when you're reading or listening to the radio, you have to image everything, and so you're involved in the process. And radio and print has been shown to boost IQ, to create more connections in the brain, activating more of the neural pathways in your mind. So I'd also tell you, though I do make documentaries, and I do go to the cinema probably every 2 weeks or so, I do like film. Television itself is very dangerous, and it takes your time, and I would encourage you to use television as a weapon, because overall it is, people say technology is neutral, and that's the case with most things, like a firearm, or a computer, or a machete. But with television, just because of the whole way it's designed, and because of the flicker rate, and the scan rate that has been adopted, it just so happens in the U.S. standard to be the perfect one for mesmerizing someone, that it overall is a very dangerous thing. And you can also look at numbers in the 50s. You can argue about statistics, but it's certainly, we know, people seeing violence desensitizes it to them, gives them an appetite for it. In the 50s, you have very low violence rate in this country, and then television becomes widely accepted, and violence begins increasing, and we see violence in the real world increasing. That's why they've had shows on C-SPAN where the Republicans have a celebration for the show 24 with Keith Sutherland and Jeff Mallett, because almost every episode they torture someone, or they torture a child, or they torture a woman in front of her husband. And then they said in the newspapers, they've written a bunch of articles about it, this is great, this justifies what we're doing, torturing. You see, because they know that there are 20-something million people a week, one of the highest rated shows, sitting there watching it, fantasizing with Jack Bauer, the good guy, torturing, and men and women all across America, from old ladies down to young black men, are sitting there in their chairs, and I've actually been in restaurants when 24 is on and watched people going. I mean, we're being Mingling, we're being brought into evil, and the neocons write articles about it. The neocons go, hey, this is really conditioning the public to accept torture. We're being taken from being somewhat of a moral society right down into total degradation. And this is all think tank propaganda. It's been admitted that many of the scripts for major TV shows, it's not, I coined the term propaganda placement. I'm sure you know about product placement, where, the movie, Wayne's World, gee, Doritos are good. But instead, this is billboards for the Marine Corps in the background, and statements about how torture is good, and how the Second Amendment's bad. I mean, there are just so many different stratas, and this is being paid. And since I mentioned that, perhaps I should go over some evidence of this. From 2003 into 2004, in those 2 years, there were billions of dollars spent. If you watch Terror Storm, I say $1.6 billion was spent just on one group of purchases of fake news by the Bush administration. But now, if you go look it up, you'll also find articles that say $1.8 billion. That's another thing to see about media. They can also strawman, because there's always different pieces of data. And if someone wanted to pick apart what I said, they'll go find an Armstrong Williams story and say, no, Bush bought $244,000 of fake news. You see how that deception works? But that was only one buy. You know about the Armstrong Williams case? The nationally syndicated columnist who was being secretly paid by the White House to go out and push Head Start on the public? Okay, that was only one buy of $1.8 billion, and those are only a couple programs we know about. All right, and the General Accounting Office ruled that that was completely illegal, and each purchase was a felony. And Bush declared executive Fuhrer-like powers, as he's doing now in the Senate and House battle with Gonzales over subpoenas, and said, I'm allowed to buy fake news. Let me give you another example, and a few hundred of these people have been uncovered. General Tommy Franks, the head of CENTCOM, head of Central Command. Well, then he went over and he ran the Iraq War. He was there 4 months, then he came back. And then he would get up on Fox and CNN, and he would always open this up with, and again, I say I don't watch a lot of TV, I analyze certain clips, mainly on the web. People kind of aggregate the information for us, and they organically and grab all the most important stuff people think the most important. If I can sit there, I can also just read synopses of what people said, transcripts, and I'll already know what they're going to say. I'll Control F, keyword posse comitatus, keyword military government, keyword give up liberties. Boom, pops up, and I can automatically get the information.